thanks for coming up.
Absolutely.
Any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to the share ride update. As we were discussing before you got here, these names are not in any particular order.
You're going first. I'm going first.
There's so many things such a big deal.
But he's got a big thing he's handing out here. You guys all got this what's in your head.
I do other places.
Not driving this picture pretty good.
Well, I come up 74. There's no traffic.
I went down to see your commissioners down there a few months back, 74. It took me an hour.
Well,
I got a truck on 74.
Did you go the true 74? Did you get it dealt the bypass like in Dillsburg? Did I say in Dillsburg? So when you come up 74, you turn on 15, and then you immediately make a left.
Well, I went up a little further.
Yeah, don't do that. That part of 74 is awful. I did that once when I was doing
I gotta look at
it.
the map, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like it, yeah. Maybe that traffic.
Do you have a couple extra copies if you're interested?
Still, we have time for the rest of us by the time Rich gets to this puppy.
Yeah, that's what you're hoping. Yeah.
Okay. Shall I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the lovely cover, we'll switch to the next page. So, you know, one of the things that we're doing is obviously the regionalization of transit, and how does that, you know, how are we continuing to look at better performance, doing more with less, those kind of things. So if you look at the first map, each color represents a operating division where scheduling and dispatching is occurring. And so we are in the beginning stages of some consolidation in that area. So by the end of this calendar year, we should have 3 scheduling dispatching centers versus the number we have now. What does that mean? As people have left, we're not replacing them, we're shifting responsibilities. And the other thing it's giving us is, you know, the staff does a great job, but if you've scheduled for a county, that is your county, that's what you're used to, and we have to remove municipal boundaries when people are moving. And so the ability of having regionalized schedulers, this is my region, so wherever it makes sense, whatever vehicle's closer, and so I think we're gonna see improved service, I think we're gonna see improved efficiencies because we're scheduling for a region. My long-term goal, and this is yet to really be defined, is that we have 2 scheduling dispatching units, a northern and a southern. You know, that's in the horizon. Let's get through phase 1, see how that works, let the dust settle, and then we'll begin looking at the next one. Because, again, all the same reasons why I think we need to do that. So we have been doing that in Perry County. Afternoon dispatching is being done in Carlisle. In the afternoon, Franklin County is being done in Carlisle, and that's working. In the north, we moved most of it to Evelysburg, and that's working really well. So we're making those progress, and things are progressing, and so far, so good, things are working. The next page is just an update on the Find My Ride tool that we use. It's a self-booking app that allows our passengers to see their information in real time now. That's a new addition since the last time I've been here. So if you look at the top of that, you see a little yellow bar. This is your ride. Will arrive in about 19 minutes. That continues to update. So the system that we use recognizes that real-time information of how long it takes for you to get there, and it counts down. So if you stay on this website, it'll count you down to your vehicle's arrived. And so that's a new feature that we've never had before, and that's a great benefit to our riders, especially seniors. Now we got to bridge the gap of technology, but and we do have them. We have seniors who want to know, you know, why can I get more online? And so you have the mix of everybody, but the idea that if you live in a, you know, some sort of housing unit where you're not at the front door, being able to see when your ride's coming, people with disabilities, it's a great benefit. So we continue to promote that. The next slide is sort of a state of good repair, both in facilities for the county and rolling stock. The numbers across the bottom are years, and then the bar chart tells you how many vehicles are in that. So we have 5 new vehicles that we recently deployed in the county. We have about 6 or 7, I should have put the numbers on there. So overall, the fleet is moving in a very good position. We don't have any vehicles beyond 5 years, so they're 5-year vehicles, so we're good in that area. And so we're very happy in that direction. We have more on order. once PennDOT approves our capital application, there'll be 3 additional new ones coming in for this current year.
What's your general practice for disposal of your vehicles?
We actually dispose of them on eBay.
Oh,
Yeah, we have to put them out for some sort of public bid,
yeah,
and it's just the easiest process. We've accepted sealed bids before, then you have to manage that whole process, and we've found that the cost or the price that we get for sell them for has gone up on eBay significantly. We would get bids for $50, and now we're hitting several thousand. And we have people all the way from Central America bidding on these things.
And then who does that money go to?
It goes back into a capital reserve account that we use for engine and transmission replacements. Big cap, you can use it for all kinds of things. We like to use it for the bigger ticket items.
It doesn't have to go back to the state.
If we didn't put it in that reserve account, we have to return it to the state. It has to go back into the transit program. At the bottom photo, you'll see the picture of your facility. We are in conversations with PennDOT at looking at potentially, and they're doing the engineering design, and we haven't seen any preliminary anything yet, but the idea of hopefully having some sort of additional bus storage undercover and a bus wash at this location. PennDOT is looking at all shared ride locations. They would like to keep their assets because they're funding those undercover so they last longer. And so they were out surveying the site, and they'll come back with some sort of plan at some point for the commissioner's consideration because it is on county land.
And I want to tell you, John Locke, our facilities manager, thinks this is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
He was very happy.
He's a smart guy that appreciates.
Right. And then the vehicle wash, bus wash, it could be a partnership with not only transit vehicles, it could also be used for county vehicles. And so that will be a great benefit, should come to fruition. So we're very early in the stage.
Rich, before we move
Yes.
on, what does the chart mean, says condition?
The condition, it is it's based on years, miles, and known conditions. So it's not very scientific. It's the person who fills out the chart evaluates the data and makes a determination of what condition it is in.
Green is the best condition?
Green is the best, red, but again, it's somewhat biased. It's not very scientific. It's just, it's the capital planning tool is a CPT is a program that PennDOT has developed where we maintain all of our assets and prints these reports based on whatever staff puts in. And so somebody in my office has said, these are at this condition. And I'm sure in their mind, if they make it worse, the money comes sooner, right? I'm sure there's some mindset like that. So condition is not a number that, or a chart, it's provided because it's part of the tool. It's really age and miles because if you don't hit 5 years and 200,000 miles.
It's 200,000 for diesel, 150,000 for gas.
You're
So
not replacing.
condition is not a very heavily refined concept.
Right, FTA says you have to have.
So it makes the bureaucrats happy.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
The top and bottom charts are the most important. Good question. We have at Rapid Transit created a nonprofit. It is 3P Ride. The idea with the nonprofit is we've begun working with community foundations for funding for trips that aren't traditionally funded through our programs. We have, and we're going to talk on the next slide about the veterans program, but we receive money for veterans. We receive money for same-day transportation, which is not allowed under PennDOT regulations. And so we're beginning to roll some of those things out. We'll be making an announcement very soon on the same-day transportation. So the idea is that we don't want individuals who are end up in the emergency room. It's much better to go to their primary care physician. Well, if they don't have transportation, they call the ambulance and they end up in the emergency room. That's not good for anybody. Unfortunately, PennDOT regulations require 1 day advance reservation, and so we're beginning to seek private funds to fill that gap to see what the need is. While a municipal authority is a tax-exempt charitable organization, if you're not a 501c3, the foundations do not recognize you. So we have created a 501c3, really almost as a sort of a foundation, if you will, for transit. It's a way to apply for grants, gather funds, and then pass it off to the organization and deliver a service. We do have a website, 3p/ride.com. And you'll notice there are 3 buttons where you can be a partner, get involved, or give. So if anybody here feels charitable and they want to click on that button and make a donation, we'll take your money and we'll use it for a really good cause. So that is available as well. The next page, I mentioned the Veterans Program. We made an announcement in York County that, let me back up. Every county has a Veterans Program staffed primarily by volunteers, and it works okay. There are certain requirements to the Veterans Program that only a veteran can ride that van. So if you're 85 years of age and you're going to your doctor's appointment, you can ride as a veteran, but your spouse cannot. You know, at that age, it really is a partnership. Sometimes a child, their children need to ride with. It requires more than just the veteran to understand what's going on with the medical condition. And so that is a huge challenge that we faced for a long time. Volunteers are volunteers. They're here when they're here and they're not when they're on vacation or have other commitments. And so there are times veterans that need transportation, but they can't find a volunteer. And that has nothing against the volunteer program. It works really great when it works great. And so we began trying to partner with those organizations. I've had staff meet with your county veteran manager, director, and all the other ones, and they're in agreement and they're working together to come up with a plan. This is the proposed schedule that we are beginning to look at. So providing Monday through Friday service, departing from the Camp Hill location at 7, arriving at the VA at 8:45, returning at 12:30. So making it a true public transportation program. Had conversations with Dauphin County folks, and they wanted some sort of veterans program. So we've added the Swatera location on the map, and we're ready to go back to them to see if that's something they want to do.
Okay, so 2 things. Neil Delisante, our head of our veteran services, rarely has anything good to say about much. But, and while we have many things to say about this whole idea, he said that there is definitely a greater demand for the service than the voluntary program requires. So that's number 1. So number 2, Dauphin County is a pretty interesting situation. So one of the things that their chief clerk was very impressed with when he met with you was this whole notion of putting together a veterans service from Dauphin County. At some point, I guess they got somebody who used to work for Rabbit, now is working over with CAT, and now they've come up with a proposal that they sent to us to see if we were interested in for a CAT-run veterans service to the Lebanon VA hospital. So it seems that they may have repurposed the idea. I mean, it's not like you have a copyright on it or anything, but it became a big thing for the chief clerk, and they seem to have at least have it's on the drawing board or it's under discussion. Of course, now if we have a regionalized, consolidated transit authority, we can have one big efficient.
Certainly makes it easy.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that information. We'll make sure we reach out to them and partner with them. We'll have to figure out how that works. But if you look at, productivity factors, we're proposing to potentially start in Gettysburg on 15, Camp Hill, and then to Lebanon. We have to drive through Dauphin County to get to the Veterans Hospital. So it probably makes sense that we partner together. And we would need CAT's support in getting folks to the pickup location anyway, so a shared ride trip and then connecting to the shuttle bus that goes. So I think there's a great opportunity to work together, and we will definitely reach out to them. The first step was getting the nod of approval from the county VA directors, and we received that, and so that'll be our next step. And I know that Michael on my team has talked to their VA folks in Dauphin County. I don't know if they're aware that proposal exists. So we'll circle back around and make sure everybody's on the same page and figure out how to move this forward. My father-in-law is a veteran, and he's 80, pretty well to do. And so my thought was, when these veterans are boarding this veteran shuttle, they're going to look like him. And so I rode one day, and these folks do not look like him. These folks, I would say probably a third of them were from the homeless shelter. The other third had some sort of amputation. These folks have needs, and without this, they're not getting those needs met. And we're steadily watching the York shuttle grow. We're up to 600 plus trips a month on this shuttle, and it continues to grow. So that's very exciting to see that as a way to return. And we received a foundation grant. We made the announcement to the community, and $100,000 came in to make it free for the veterans. So we think we can do the same thing in the rest of the regions. There's an appetite to support veterans, and these folks cannot afford a copay. It's just not possible. It was an eye-opening experience. I'm glad I rode that day. The need is there, it's real, and it's intense. It's pretty important. So, good stuff, right? Helping the community meet its needs. Some fun visual stuff. We've had lots of requests from different organizations, like what is rapid transit, what do you do? And so our marketing team has put together some basic flyers that are available in PDF form that can be printed out, put it on bulletin boards, put on web banners. So we continue to work with our community partners, the human service agencies, to get the word out. We have spent a significant amount of time in Franklin County. The Keystone Health Organization is a partner of ours through the Rides to Wellness grant. And so they're going to do the pilot demonstration for connectivity between a healthcare system and a transit. The idea is when someone books a trip, if they need transportation, it's done at the same time. So they don't have to go home and try to make a phone call and try to communicate back and forth between a healthcare system and a transit agency. So we selected a federally qualified agency who was willing to partner with us. They were. The CEO of that organization has made it her mission. She's the chairperson for the Community Health Needs Assessment for Access. And so she has put us on every single agenda that she can get us on. The good news is that ridership in this July was 9% higher than it was last July. So it is having a positive effect, getting out in the community, meeting those needs. So we're lessons learned. We're kind of documenting all the things we're doing in Franklin County that's really reaching out to the community and connecting people who have transportation needs to transportation, and then we can begin replicating that in the other counties. If we can see a 9% increase in shared ride, that's pretty impressive. So I wanted to share with you some performance measures from really just the 5 counties from the southern, and then you can see that there on the map with the counties noted in red. So as you would expect, as more counties come into the fold, ridership goes up. That makes sense. What I found surprising is the average trip distance. With the addition of Perry County, which makes sense, our average trip length really jumped up. And that is because everyone who lives in Perry County has to come here for services. It's just, that's how it is. And miles traveled has also increased, which would make sense if the average trip distance going up, the average number of miles go up. The next page is really the more important statistics if you ask me. So it is important to us that the consumer has the best possible experience on our service as possible. But there are sort of competing factors. You have passengers per hour, which is really how we pay the bills. The number of people who ride per hour, it's a fee for service. So it's really important that more people on that bus, the easier to discover the cost. That is in direct conflict with on-time performance. So if you put a lot of people on there, achieving on-time performance is a challenge. So we are in this battle of, wanting to have a great experience, but also making sure it's run in a productive manner. Our on-time performance has increased pretty significant. We're operating in the low 90s, high 80s, and we're consistently at 95% or greater. That's wonderful for the consumer. That means we're on time for their appointments. That means we are on time when we said we're going to be there. That doesn't necessarily make it wonderful for them because everybody wants to be the last one picked up and the first one dropped off. That's not how shared ride works. But if we say we're going to be there at 9 and and we're gonna drop you off at 10, we're 95% on time with the times we say we're gonna get you there and pick you up. So that doesn't always make for a happy customer. But that's how public transportation works, it's about moving the masses. So I'm very pleased with the numbers that we're achieving on the on-time performance side when you consider, construction and weather and all kinds of things that affect. We build a schedule for the ideal world, and when the bus driver goes out there, we're dealing with all kinds of crazy variables. So I'm really happy with that. The other thing we've been spending a lot of time on, more recently than not, and you can see how and not every county did what, like York and Cumberland did. Franklin and Perry, less sophisticated, didn't really look at these numbers. So you can see as we bring on systems, those numbers decline, and that is the average trip duration. We really want to make sure that the people are on the vehicle the least amount of time as possible. And, there's nothing worse than a senior citizen who has to ride for an hour and a half.
With no bathrooms.
With no bathrooms. They're the kind of things that we look at. Sometimes it's inevitable. I mean, if you're riding from northern Perry County to come to Mechanicsburg for a medical appointment, that's just a long trip even if you're by yourself. Add one other person, going out of the way, picking them up, shared rides, those challenges. So we continue to look at those numbers, trying to figure out how to be productive and have the best experience possible. We have just signed an agreement with Lyft. We've had an agreement with Uber. There are challenges with those. We've had some seniors, and we're primarily, again, looking at the urbanized area of work, so we want to just kind of pilot there to get our hands around it. We have half the seniors who absolutely love it because it's a direct ride, and they can see everything they need to see. The other half do not like it because it's a different driver, it's not my driver. How do I know this person's safe? What do I know? The vehicle's not marked. And there are all those kind of challenges. But we are looking at other partners to help us improve these statistics, make a better experience, and make sure that everybody's mobility needs are met. Spending a lot of time with the Franklin County CEO of the healthcare system has really opened my eyes to a lot of what I call dumb rules. So we have a policy at rapid transit, no dumb rules. And I'll give you an example of a dumb rule. We allow, if the mother has, on Medicaid, has an appointment, the children weren't necessarily allowed to ride because no one pays for their seat. But we have 18 passenger vehicles with 4 passengers per hour at best. There's empty seats on that bus. Right. So children ride. Because if the mother can't take the child, then the mother doesn't see the doctor because they can't afford to use it. And so we're looking at all those kinds of things, allowing pets on board. If you're a senior and you need to take your cat to the veterinarian, there are systems that never allow that. Well, you have to put it in the carrier, bring it on board. Anything that comes up like that, we're re-examining, no dumb rules. What do we need to do to really enhance the community customer experience? And that's what we're looking at.
You ever been on a bus in Mexico or South America?
With the chickens? We're trying to avoid that level. we do want them in some sort of carrier.
After a while, you get used to it.
They're the one working on a passenger, but we put them off.
We've had some people who tried to board with tarantulas as comfort animals. And I draw a line with large spiders and snakes. Although the snake can supposedly tell whether or not you're going to have a seizure, so that's the story. So that's the last slide that I'm offering today, but I think overall things are going pretty well. There are always challenges as we move forward. A lot of the challenges we face is really more cultural with employees than anything else, getting them to understand a different way of doing business, getting them to understand that it's okay to pick somebody up in a neighboring community that we've never served before. That's not our county. Well, no, this is our service area, and that's how we do it. And so we made a lot of progress in that area, and overall, I really think it was a very good decision. We're moving in the right direction.
Rose, if we had taken a snapshot of the staff, the county staff, after everybody had the option to opt out or to stay on as a Rapid employee, of those people at that point, was it 2 years ago?
Yes. Those 2 years, yeah.
What kind of turnover have we had
We
of
had-
that group?
Yeah, we did not have anyone leave after that we did we merged. We did not have any of our people merged. We did have one person that we did hire to replace somebody who had taken a job with the county. So we had a position that we needed to fill. So but other than that, no one has left. Monica had her position, she chose to go somewhere else. But other
We had
than
one
that-
person select out.
Yes, and-
After they came on board, and relocated to another board.
And other than that, we did not have any, that one have already, like that, we had a couple drivers who retired, but they didn't retire anyhow, so.
Again, the Perry County, we had one dispatcher who resigned, retired really. And we moved that so as people are moving, we're moving those positions around. We had someone leave New York, and so that the ladies in Perry County started doing application processing. So really looking at wherever the staff are, that's where we move the responsibilities to the best of our abilities.
Who's next? Thank you, Rich.
Yes.
Well, we're going to talk about customer experience, as Larry asked. I think, the first thing I want to start out with is to be sure that we're all talking about the same thing. It's important to understand that Share a Ride or Paratransit is actually 7 different programs or services. All 7 of them operate under different regulations. Think about the challenge there. So we have Share a Ride, 7 different services or programs, 7 pretty different populations, and 7 different regulations and rules. So, that's something that when we're talking about taking a look at things that are kind of impacting Share a Ride, that's a factor. And understand that individuals are grouped together for transportation based upon where they're going, when they're going, and those kinds of things. So it's not door to door, it's curb to curb, and it's specific. And sometimes rides that might take 30 minutes in the car could easily take an hour on Share a Ride because of the stops and those kinds of things. Share a Ride really came about early in the 70s with the ADA, American Disability Act. And the purpose was to transport individuals who didn't have access or could not access public transportation. A very small number was expected to be served, and it was typically human service agencies who did that transportation. So the background and history is very different than the place the Share a Ride program is today. And so it's really important to have some understanding of what Share a Ride was designed to do, what it does, and how that may or may not fit in exceedingly well with some of the culture of today. Sandy, you want to talk about customer experience?
Yeah, the customer experiences. I think remembering that we are talking about shared rides, and I think that's kind of the theme here. But I will start, I reached out to our senior centers and care managers and the link. And, good things to date. Well, first of all, we got through the transition. I think that the first year, phone calls, everything. But I think we're back to normal, if there is such a thing. And I think a lot of the comments that came out were they do like the convenience of the service. We shouldn't have left for chauffeurs because they like scheduling the trips online, but this was an under 60 person. I haven't heard that, but yeah, they like that convenience of being able to purchase online with a credit card. And there were comments that they really do feel that the drivers are courteous and go out of their way to accommodate. So I think that's really important. One of the things that's important with the waiver consumers is that they do let the attendants go along. Those usually are the people who have the most, disabilities and difficulty with being able to, once they get there, not being able to get into a doctor's office.
Is there a perception that they can't?
No, I think this was just somebody saying this is a good thing and we
Good thing,
appreciate
right?
that.
We do that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that when you were talking about that ride to wellness though, I think once community health choices hits, that same day ride, and that's like gonna be, like the MCOs will be all over that. So I think that's great, and I think that's, all the MCOs, the managed care says to us, do you have transportation? Well, we have shared rides, so I think that will be a real bonus in January 2019, if that's for real. Some of the issues are really sound just like the fact that we're talking about a shared ride. One requirement that is difficult for them is the fact that the trip has to last an hour, or they have to be there an hour. And there are people who might be just going to a doctor's appointment for a monthly injection that they know is going to take 15 minutes. They've been doing it, but they can't schedule, for an hour out. So that is a problem, problematic for some people, that they express some issues with that. And then we hear just people, sometimes it's late. Obviously, there are a lot of riders who feel that they have better routes and shortcuts than the drivers take. So they've been driving this for a long time. I'm sure they probably tell the driver, why are you going this way? Because, that's something they felt they needed to share. And of course, the pickup times, and just what you addressed is they don't like to have to be ready an hour ahead and wait for a doctor's appointment, and then have to call when they're done and wait again. All part of the shared ride experience. For the future, and what we're hearing loud and clear, weekends, they want weekend transportation, and some have requested even later hours for the evening. Do people feel like they're getting their money's worth? Well, in the aging world, they're not paying, so I hope they are. That's, but we feel we do. I mean, our costs have pretty much remained stable with the pretty much same amount of riders. I think we work well with Rapid as far as, I have included, I think you got the policy, you're probably familiar with it because you approved things like trips to the library and the support groups, that when Rapid has a question about it, like, is this what you mean by this in the policy? So we have a good open communication with the Rapid staff and what's appropriate, like, is Weight Watchers a support group? Yes. One yesterday was, can they grocery shop at Goodwill? I thought, well, last I heard, there's not food at Goodwill, but it used to be a Carnes, so I don't know. And that actually, when you talked about the drivers, the regionalization, again, some consumers believe, or riders think that the drivers are not as familiar with where they're driving. And then sometimes they miss a stop, and again, the routes are, not what they want them to be. But that might be an issue as you regionalize more. I know that it's little GPSs are great, but that becomes an issue for people. So I think that's kind of the aging perspective at this point. And I would say in general, it's good.
If somebody does get done before the hour,
Mhm.
they can call us.
Okay.
If we have somebody that's in the area that can do it, we do that.
Okay.
And we do encourage that drivers will,
Yeah.
we've encouraged them
Good.
to do that.
Okay.
And lots of times we can go back and get them.
And I'll make sure.
Sometimes we can, but lots of
Yeah.
times we can't.
We're getting a new on-hold music announcement system
Mhm.
that actually you can hear and understand. And so that is one of the messages that have been slated to be put
Okay.
on that. So when they're on hold listening to that, which is way down to nothing but, because remember we had that issue when I was here last time as well. We said, we mastered that. We're rock solid there. So hopefully they get to listen to the message. But that's one of the messages that we've discovered recently that people don't understand that they can do that.
And I heard that from a couple, but the one person I do know, I'll be sure that she's aware of that
Please do that.
and let her know that. And I think that was the thing too, sometimes again about the regionalization, and I know sometimes we get a call that, like Carlisle's helping out York or some such thing, that some people don't feel that the information is always as consistent. Again, probably because of the region, because York is really far from here, I know. And so there's not always some, consistency with the answers they get, so.
And I think there's some of the things we struggled with early on, that is, we regionalized, making sure everybody understands the same thing.
Yeah.
Because there's a little leftover pieces of information that this is how we used to do it. Well, we don't do that, this is how we do it collectively. Because when we look at everybody's policies and procedures, we take the best of everything and sort of raise the ship. And so they may be saying we don't do that when we really do. And so
Yeah, the exercise classes, yeah.
Yes.
We were over that too, I think.
I know
Yeah.
so.
We help.
And I think this is a good thing for Cumberland County, but the fact is that because we do pay for everyone. And now we have that shared senior, Franklin County, like, and we did get some responses from Franklin County people from Ranch Creek Place who were not very happy that
We've had folks who
They have to pay.
have reached out to state legislators asking, why does this person not pay? I think it was a Perry County person, maybe Steve and Sylvia were involved in that, but why did this person pay and this person doesn't? All different counties, different procedures.
right.
So,
So we're the envy of everybody.
We really are.
Yeah.
Well,
So we're
that-
grateful. We're grateful.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Good.
And I think from a customer perspective, MHID has pretty much the same kind of experiences, certainly in the beginning with the rules and some of those kinds of things that folks were not necessarily used to following, be that provider or customers. I think things have been right. I do need to really say that when we were making changes and, going through the process, that Rich was very concerned about folks, especially our waiver ID consumers, having to lose any kind of service in order to pay for transportation, and was very willing to kind of make that work for everybody so that folks did not really have to take a hit. And I think that's something that's truly commendable. And you don't tend to see that kind of behavior a lot, so I appreciate that. But we too have had basically very positive experiences, and the biggest thing on the front side was people needing to learn if there are rules and that the rules need to be followed. Probably aspirations, same thing, evenings and weekends, I think, are big for people. You asked if we have any current situations. We have one. Rich is well aware of it. It's about a young man with ID who works in Harrisburg, and sometimes is late for work, and sometimes gets picked up late. He was picked up late twice this summer. And I mean, the reality is that share a ride is share a ride. And, you can't always be there at 3 o'clock to pick someone up. I think the two circumstances per Rich, there were accidents, and so you're late. It is what it is. We talked about several different options, and certainly there are always different options. Talked about Uber and Lyft. The concern, but the issue there is that Uber and Lyft are not ODP certified providers, so we cannot use them.
Well, even beyond that, not everyone, even if they work, not everybody would be a candidate for that. We
Right.
don't have to worry about that in the aging world, but someone who has cognitive issues probably shouldn't be in where the
Exactly.
driver's not taking them from the home to the door wherever they're going.
Exactly.
And that continuation of care.
Exactly.
So it's
And families, of course, I think, and understandably so, would have serious concerns about a driver, who they don't know, who doesn't know their adult child or whatever. So that is a concern as well. But, I think that when those things do come up, Rabbit's always very willing to work to come up with solutions and, talk with the families. And sometimes there really is nothing you can do to solve a specific problem. It is what it is.
I mean, some of the challenge you run into with shared ride is while we try to standardize and have policies and procedures, the reality is people's lives matter, and and so we'll have, especially for folks going under the MHID program, like you have to pick this. You have to be here before 7 o'clock because I go to work. You can't leave, and then you can't drop them off until 2:30 because that's what time I get home. And so as we build these schedules, like, okay, this person has to ride a little longer. It's sort of putting sometimes a puzzle together without having to cover up the box. It's just trying to figure out what that looks like. But you do that because that's what our community needs.
Right, that's what the needs are,
It's
absolutely.
what the community needs, but let me ask you a question. We had this, remember when we were being threatened with the termination of our service by an unnamed party across the river for our fixed route commuters. And we looked into options, we had a good discussion, as always, with Chicago Health. But really, is it within the scope of a shared ride operation to actually be able to accommodate working people's commutes?
More than 50% of the people who ride under the Persons with Disability Program is going to work.
Really?
Yeah, it's a large percentage. In some counties, it can be as high as 70%.
Really?
Yeah, it is very much work-centric program.
I do need to say though, that those folks who may have disabilities, we have more and more folks, MHN or ID, taking, those
Transition.
opportunities for work. However, that population has not yet really hit
Right.
that system.
Right. We know it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming, it is
Yeah,
coming,
and there are going to be big challenges.
yes.
And when we talk about evening service, we're going to have to develop evening service because a lot of these service jobs are going to be, right, it's going to be the fast food restaurant, the hotel, and the people who clean your rooms, but they'll be shut until noon because checkouts at noon. And so, then they're there until 7 o'clock at night. And so they're the challenges that we're going to have to face as a transit organization to be able to support the community initiatives.
That's all broken in the process.
Right.
Mhm.
And just so you know, when that same individual, when we had bus breakdown, we had a person go out of the office trying to get there as soon as we could, but it was still after the 3 o'clock. And I'm not sure he would come out and get on a lift or Uber because it wouldn't be
He
something.
would know, he would not
recognizes.
know it,
Yes.
absolutely, he would not know it, and he probably, which is actually a good thing.
It is a good thing, yes.
Yeah, not everybody would be.
Yes.
But if we can use some of those other tools for folks on medical assistance, it may free up our capacity to take care of issues. So maybe when there's a breakdown and we have to divert another driver, can another passenger be put on Uber and that person? So we're trying to figure out what that looks like, and we're early in those stages. It's juggling.
And they don't want us to call his work, so we would have called and said we're running late, but they don't want,
I know.
the parents don't want us to call. So we're kind of, got our hands tied, we can't let them know, so.
The idea
It's
is,
just a
the
challenge.
ideal situation is you're not.
Yes, exactly.
That's where we have to be.
Well, if it's any consolation, when CAT runs its regular fixed route transportation, people get fired because the bus doesn't show up 3 days in a row.
There are some standards for which you don't want to measure yourself against.
Exactly.
You choose others.
Yes.
One question, you mentioned earlier about, you said 70% of those, of the disabled are riding for work, for community purposes. So, but what percentage of the entire rider population is the disabled segment?
It's a growing portion of our program. I
20%, 40%?
The disabled population, well, the reality of the situation is that, the Persons with Disability Program is from 18 to 59, or it could be up to 64 depending on the program. So that person who is under Persons with Disability will age into her program. And so once they go into her program, they're not necessarily tracked as disabled. I would say that it is a large percentage of our riders who have some form of disability. If you live long enough, you will have some form of disability. It's sight, hearing, something. So I would say that people who ride under our programs, it could be as easily 75% of them have a disability.
So I'm just trying to put that earlier number into context about how many of your entire population is using it for commuting purposes.
And that's just that one program.
Right.
And we do have seniors who use it for work, who use it for volunteer, which is like work. So that's a pretty big number. It really is, it's not only good for the individual, it's good for the community. A while back, I guess it was when Act 44 was in debate. We did a campaign for the urban fixture program. We had buttons made that I'm a rabbit rider. And so anywhere you went, everywhere you went, every service industry, there was somebody standing at the register, serving you at your table. It is, public transportation gets individuals into the community to support the businesses. I mean, I had a McDonald's owner who said that I couldn't staff my store until I started offering bus passes, and now I don't have a staffing issue anymore.
Yeah.
They're the kind of things that are important that you don't necessarily see from the outside.
Kirk, do you have anything you want to add to the discussion?
Yeah, just quick from the board perspective, Sylvia and I sit on the board, so I think, the past year and a half we've been on the board. One of the big things is, we're one on that point. I mean, there's 10 entities that are represented under the Rabbit umbrella, but when it comes to those board meetings, we're one. And I think it's very important as we move ahead that we don't want to look at this as just what's Cumberland County doing, how's Cumberland County performing. We need to look at the whole system as a CPTA system as a whole. I think we do a very good job of that. And also that we're not looking at just fixed or paratransit, we're also looking at fixed route for York and Adams County as well too. So a lot of those decisions come. So you see full board discussion on issues that sometimes really don't even affect us. But really at the end of the day, I think that the board is excellent. We're succeeding as a region. The board, I think some of the strong points, and the people that are on there, there's some board meetings, I go to a lot of night meetings with the municipalities, we're out a lot, so some I dread going to, others I like going to. This is one, when I go there, you learn. As a board member, you learn from everybody. There's so many different perspectives. And the people aren't there for resume building, power, politics, anything like that. They're there to serve the customer. And the passion that Rich and his team show for the customers that we serve is there with the board as well. So I think that's really the customer focus is so important. And then on the innovation side, we're never satisfied with the status quo, never. You know, we do our annual retreats in February. Those retreats are always so forward-looking that, you know, we come out of them and I go home. This year I went home, we showed a video from Morgan Stanley. I went home and showed it to my family. You know, it was based upon automated vehicles, but we're looking so far ahead. And then you see that we're not just looking at it, but we're implementing it with, you know, Rich mentioned the Find My Ride, automated vehicles, Uber, the CNG fueling station you just built, the My Stop bus tracking application. It's all innovation that makes it better for the system, makes it better for the customer, and at the end of the day gets us more rides, and it's all about getting the rides and the people that we're serving. And that's what we see from the board level. The staff, we can't say enough about them. Rich and his team are competent, they're professional, they're passionate. You look at some of the marketing materials that are out there, the driver recruitment videos that have been put out, are excellent. When you read that, you really you see those, you get a feel for what it is to be a driver. And I think if you're thinking about doing that, it really tugs at the heartstrings to do that, you know, and it really takes some special people to drive for our shared ride system. How to ride tutorials, you know, breaking down the walls on that first ride, which is always the toughest ride. A lot of that stuff's on the website and done really well. So from the board, I enjoy participating in the board. I learn a lot from the board, and we're there for the right reasons. And I think when you put a strong board like that together with a passionate, talented staff, you get a lot of great service. I think it's been a great transition for us. I think it's a preview of things to come if we get through some of the regionalization issues, that the success we're seeing on paratransit, they can be seen on fixed route as well.
Just make a couple of questions and points, I guess. That sounds like a very different board experience than what we've been accustomed to hearing reported back to us from a number of entities, one including the fixed ride provider, fixed transit provider that we were discussing a little earlier, considerably different board experience. But I wanted to ask two questions of Rich, I guess. You mentioned about the communications tools that are available. How do you go about providing those? Do you have an outside contractor? Is there somebody in-house? Or
This goes way back to the safety blue bill, which was 3 transportation bills ago. We received it from the congressman, earmarked when they were allowed, and that's how the resources we use to purchase that tool. So it is a free information tool that is either through a mobile website, you can access it, or through an app that you download on your smartphone. You can have a desktop experience. You can log in and create reoccurring reminders, so your phone will buzz when it's time for your bus as it's approaching, to just simply looking to see where the bus is at with no connection. You can just be a guest. So there's all different levels and layers. We have at the bus stop level QR codes and texting capabilities. So you can either scan the QR code, it'll tell you when the next bus arrives, or you can text the number and it'll send back the next bus arrival. And so we're always looking at how to put that information right at the consumer's
Who formulates that plan, that, all different tools? I mean, the idea of a video for the first time rider is a great idea. Who came up with that? Is that
our team. I mean, we're always when we identify an issue. We mentioned that we're solution oriented. That's how it is, and we never rest out our laurels and what's next. And so when we talked about the whole the 1 hour rule, and I immediately wrote, well, why can't we at least begin in the urban areas to change that? Because if you're living in Carlisle and your appointment's in Carlisle, why do you need to wait an hour? That's really a dumb rule. And so we need to go back and figure out how do we. Now, if you live on the outer edges of the county, you're going to be waiting because
your chances are it's not the same driver taking you back. And so I already wrote that down, we're gonna look at that. So it's just, my philosophy has always been, if you're a manager, you manage. And that's what you do. You figure out solutions and you manage your way through the process and you figure out solutions. We're the first in the region to have bike racks on all of our fixed route buses. Why is that? Our customer survey said that our riders from 2 years prior, the number of blocks they had to travel to or from doubled. Well, we can't put more bus service out, but our riders are traveling greater distances. How do we help accommodate that? What can we do? Bike racks. We're over 1,200 a month boardings with bicycles on our fixed route because people are using them to go further. They ride the bus and then they get off, they ride their bike to work because they may have another half mile to go. And so it's just what's in our toolbox, what can we create to address issues? And we don't need any stone under.
Let me follow up on that. A similar question. Kirk mentioned specifically about the planning sections that you have. And if they're done correctly, they really should drive the entire organization for that year and actually establish a vision as well. So they're very important. Some people do them well, some people don't do them so well. But being future oriented is very, it's what management should be doing, but a lot of places they are not because they're focused on solving today's problem, firefighting, rather than thinking long term. So my question is similar. It's the old adage, everybody should be interested in the future because we're all going to live there. So what is it you do to condition your board members to be future oriented, and how do you identify the topics for the future of transportation to get people out of thinking about today's balance sheet and thinking about the direction of transportation?
I think it's a combination effort again between staff and board members. There's always a conversation. Much like here, I take notes when things happen. I participate with our national transit organizations. I was invited for the whole access to care. We were on the leadership team for that, and they paid me to fly to Minnesota and back in one day. It was great. But being a place to go.
Glamour cruise.
6 minutes airport. Who would have thought that? But being at the table, eyes open, paying attention to the details, really I think is what leads us. The board chairman for me is someone who's been on our board for a long time, and he's very innovative, and now he's retired. He sends me regular articles from the Wall Street Journal. I can't possibly read all that, don't tell him that. I have time, just right. But I think all the board members are very good, and it's a diverse board. I mean, we have planning, and we have really a focus for folks with people with disabilities, and we have someone from a housing authority, and the board is so diverse. What people bring to the table is just simply amazing.
Do you do board development?
We do.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the board retreats really. We have these mandated meetings, trainings that PennDOT do. I would call them development, but we provide regular articles when we see something and communicate, just to keep what's fresh, what's new. I think probably the way all industries are this way, but I think ours is incredibly complex. How we're funded. Sylvia mentioned, 7 different programs with 7 different rules, and we have a board of directors and staff who try to have to keep that all straight, balance, and make it all work together. And that's just the paratransit side. When you have the fixed route side, then there's a whole other set of requirements. And then they come and audit you, and we had the one finding where it was in our drug and alcohol policy, and you can't make this stuff up. It was, the finding was that our policy said they had to be tested in 1 hour, and the regulation says 60 minutes. And that was a finding. Wow.
You guys should be thrown in jail.
But sometimes it's to that level of detail you have to be paying attention to. We thought it was the same thing. But I really think we're innovative because everybody who's involved in the organization, not just my senior staff, but the next level down, and really right down to the drivers. It's a mission-based organization. It's about making the community better. You talk to any driver anywhere, when they refer to their passengers, it's my people. And they'll stand tall for my people. There's something that we do they don't like, and it's going to affect my people. They're in your office, and they're not happy about that. And so I think it's just the culture of the organization.
One of the things that I know Ray started as part of our regular board meetings, we'll put an empty seat in the room, and that seat represents the customer. So as you're sitting there at your board meetings, you're thinking about the customer, thinking about what they're, the seats after, we do get some people at board meetings, but the seats there to be thought about, and every decision we make, we look at that, it's a powerful reminder of what we're there for.
You get the vote.
Only in a time.
What's your prognosis on rates?
Well, for shared ride rates, yeah. Every system we've gone to, who've joined, including the base system of North Adams, was really at the verge of being a fare increase at the time of the regionalization. So when we bring them on, we see the savings, but then costs begin to climb again. And so collectively, we just finished our fiscal year books. Collectively in 10 counties, now the final cost allocation hasn't happened yet. We are looking collectively at a $60,000 loss in 10 counties. That's really nothing.
60,000 across 10 counties?
Yeah, that's really
6,000 apiece?
Yes. So that's pretty good, because our goal is to break even, right?
So wait, now is that 6,000 or 1,600?
No. I'll think about that. But one of the things that we have not factored into this that we realized after MATP, Department of Human Services, recently changed how we're reimbursed from a traditional, they would reimburse at 60 cents for a fixed route, exact amount for mileage reimbursement, and exact amount for paratransit trips. We now get reimbursed a flat rate for every trip. So I think it's $27. So if we have a mileage reimbursement that is $2.50, we're getting $27. But if I have a long distance trip to Philadelphia, we do those, and it's $400, I'm getting $27. Working through that process, we believe that will be zero by the end of our cost allocation through the audit process. But that tells me though we're getting close to having to do something.
Within a year, 2 years, 3 years?
I would say within a year, we're going to begin having those conversations probably for next budget year. I'd like to see us do small, maybe 2%, 2% over 3 years versus saying, let's have 6. Right? I think it's more palatable for everybody's budgets if we could project for them in the future. I do think there are, we'll still have to have unique circumstances because, we know there are people on waiver that are out there with all the services they consume. They're pretty much, and for those folks who go 5 days a week, their choice then is to go 4 days a week. That doesn't help. So we're going to have to, there's going to be some massaging of that process to make sure that no one's harmed in the process, but we will continue to do those things.
That was something I was planning to talk about, but it's nice having him. So, that's a conversation Rich and I have been having a lot with all the changes coming down, be it MH, be it ID, and the fact that, share a ride used to be you pick up a whole bunch of people who live congruently and you take them to one location for the day for their services. Gone are those days. That stopped with MH about 10 years ago and impacted transportation and what MH base paid. Huge shift now in ID, same kind of thing. People will be all picked up typically at group homes or wherever and transported to CIT where they spent their day and then transported home. So you knew from 9 to 3, this whole group of people was going to be here. That doesn't happen anymore. It's a huge shift. And with that comes real different kind of focus around transportation and transportation needs. So, when you're looking at that, and the other thing that was a huge factor is with medical assistance. Previous to health choices, medical assistance provider, people were expected to see the provider closest to their home that could meet their needs. Now, freedom of choice. People can live in Shippensburg and choose to go to Hershey Med Center to see their doctor.
Is that damning speed of Medicaid that's driving up our transportation costs?
No, that has nothing to do with Medicaid expansion.
Being physicians, more people got it.
But I do think, as these things happen, it is a huge impact to transportation.
That population is a pretty pretty transient population.
It's a very transient
So
population.
I live in this community, I build a relationship with a doctor. Now I have to move to another community for some support network or family member, but I still want my doctor here.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing, and then on top of that, you have, I call it the Game of Thrones effect in healthcare, where everyone's trying to be, in charge. And so this merger, this joiner, this blah. So, now that Holy Spirit is a Guy Singer affiliate, it's only a matter of time before people are going to Danville for major procedures.
For major procedures.
Right, we're
You're
gonna start seeing
absolutely
that.
right. So, I think we need to be thinking about all these changes and how we're gonna be able to kind of meet those needs.
You're gonna have UPMC in here too.
We already go to Pittsburgh regularly.
They're gonna buy the Pinnacle folks, Pinnacle just
Right.
bought Carlisle Regional, in addition to having the one that works for the boat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's changing the
So-
landscape of how people
right,
meet.
right.
Even in the senior world, it used to be pick people up at home, take them to the senior center. Occasionally you take a group to the grocery store, then they all go home. Now, they're much more independent. They want to do different things. They leave the senior center and want to go someplace that people are just mobile and there's more independence.
And I think the other thing too is that we are seeing more individuals with much more significant need and complex need living in the community independently. We talk about aging waivers for folks who meet eligibility for nursing homes who are now living in the community and have some support in home X hours a day. So when you're talking about the share a ride system, instead, think about the impact this has on length of time for someone to get on the bus and situated. Think about the length of time it takes to get off. Think about the impact, those kinds of things. And I think we're seeing more, I know we are,
Yes.
more and more folks with much more complex, multi-systemic system needs. And that really has huge impact on transportation. So I think there's a lot, a lot coming that is gonna really necessitate a look at some kind of fare increase. Just,
The MCOs will pay.
yeah,
To get people to a doctor, yeah.
If it's MA,
Yeah,
if it's MA.
Those.
What's great about those folks, because I know where else they work, and our rates are right now extremely inexpensive.
Yeah.
compared to pay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thank you for the update. It was very
Absolutely.
informative, very good. Any closing questions or comments? Is there any other business to be brought in front of the board here?